In the blurry video outside the halfway house, a man walked out into the sunlight. His name was Ben. He was 34 years old. He looked tall and thin, and his face seemed tired. His eyes were quiet, like someone who had been through a lot. He didn't walk fast. He didn't smile. He didn't talk to anyone. Keanu sat at his desk, watching the video over and over. Each time he looked at Ben's face carefully. There was something about the way Ben looked down, the way his shoulders slumped, the way he stood alone. Keanu could feel that sadness. He knew what it was like to be lonely. Keanu thought, that man is my brother. He doesn't know I exist. And I didn't know about him until just a few days ago. But we are family. Ben didn't have anyone. No mom to hug him. No dad to tell him stories. No brother to laugh with him or help him when he felt scared. Keanu had felt alone many times in his life too. But this was different. Ben had been alone since he was a child. Keanu remembered the photo. The small boy sitting on a swing. His hair was messy. His feet were bare. But the eyes. Those eyes were just like Keanu's. That picture felt like a window into the past. A past Keanu had never seen. He thought, what was he like as a little kid? Did he ever have a birthday party? Did he ever get a present? Did he have a bed to sleep in at night? Keanu couldn't stop thinking about him. At night, Keanu sat in his quiet kitchen. The lights were low. The world outside was dark. On the table was the photo of Ben, the letter from their father, and the folder from the lawyer. Keanu looked at them again and again. He didn't sleep much. He drank warm tea that turned cold. His heart felt full of heavy thoughts. The letter from their dad, Gerard, kept whispering in his mind. His name is Ben. He never knew me. I hope someone else might show him more than I did. That sentence felt like a stone in Keanu's chest. He couldn't ignore it. He didn't want to be angry, but he didn't know how to forgive either. He just knew that there was someone out there who needed love. Someone who had never been told, you matter. So Keanu made a plan. He wanted to learn more about Ben before going to him. He wanted to understand who Ben was now. Not just the boy in the picture, but the man he had become. He called Daniel Marsh, a friend he trusted. Daniel used to be an FBI agent. He was calm, quiet, and very smart. He had helped Keanu before, and Keanu knew Daniel wouldn't tell anyone. I need help, Keanu said softly. I need to find someone. Send me what you have, Daniel replied. Keanu sent him everything. The letter, the photo, the copy of the birth certificate. There wasn't much to go on, but Daniel promised to try. For 3 days Keanu waited. He still went to work. He still smiled for pictures. But all the while his mind was with Ben. When Daniel finally called, his voice was gentle. I found him, he said. Keanu's heart started to pound. His name is Ben Hale, Daniel said. He's 34 years old. He has no wife, no kids. He's living in a halfway house in a place called Englewood. Keanu didn't speak right away. He's had a hard life, Daniel continued. He grew up in foster care. He moved around a lot. He lived on the streets for a while. He went in and out of rehab. But he stayed out of big trouble. No serious crimes. Just some warnings. He worked a few jobs, but nothing lasted long. Keanu felt his chest tighten. Does he know who his father was? He asked quietly. No, Daniel said. He thinks Gerard was just a name on a piece of paper. He never knew the truth. Keanu nodded even though no one could see him. He whispered, don't talk to him yet. Not yet. I just want to watch. I need to understand. Okay, Daniel agreed. I'll keep you updated. So, for the next few days, Keanu watched. Daniel sent videos and notes. Each time, Keanu saw more of Ben's life. He saw Ben walking into shelters, sitting alone on a bench, carrying a small backpack that held everything he owned. Sometimes Ben stared at the ground. Sometimes he looked up at the sky. He rarely spoke to anyone. He looked like someone who was trying to be okay, trying to stay clean, trying to live. But life had never made it easy for him. Keanu felt both proud and sad. He's still here, Keanu thought. Even after everything, he's still trying. One evening, Keanu sat on his couch, holding the old photo. The little boy on the swing. The one who became this quiet, strong man. How can I just walk up and say I'm your brother? Keanu wondered. What if he doesn't believe me? What if he doesn't want me? But the bigger question was harder. What if I don't go at all? What if he keeps living like this, thinking no one in the world cares? Keanu knew that kind of sadness. He had felt it in his own way. But he had friends. People who cared. Ben didn't. Keanu decided. He called his assistant, Claire. I need help finding someone, he said. Claire didn't ask why. She knew something was different. His voice was softer. Slower. It wasn't for a movie. It wasn't for work. This was something close to his heart. Within 2 days, Claire had more information. She gave Keanu a folder. "It's not good," she said gently. Keanu opened it and saw Ben's most recent photo. A mugshot. Ben looked tired. His cheeks were hollow. His eyes looked like they had cried too many times. But still, there was something in them. A spark. A little bit of hope. "Where was this taken?" Keanu asked. "Downtown LA," Claire replied. Keanu stood up. "I'm going to find him." Claire looked worried. "Are you sure you want to do this yourself?" Keanu nodded. "I have to." Not as Keanu Reeves. As his brother. So he went. He didn't bring a camera crew. No fancy car. No bodyguards. Just himself. He walked into a part of Los Angeles most people try to avoid. The sidewalks were broken. The air smelled like old rain and smoke. Some people looked at him. Some didn't. Keanu wasn't looking for anyone else. Just Ben. He didn't know what he would say. Or if he'd even find him that day. But he had a name. He had a face. And he had something even stronger than curiosity. He had love. Ben had lived a hard life. Not by choice. But because no one had stayed. No one had told him, "You matter. You belong." But now someone was coming. Someone who would not leave. Keanu didn't know if Ben would believe him. Or trust him. But he knew this. He would try. Because deep down they were not strangers. They were brothers. And that meant something. It meant everything. Keanu watched carefully. Every morning, Ben came out of the building with his hoodie up, earbuds in, and his head down. He walked like he didn't want anyone to see him. Daniel had sent Keanu notes. He had written down everything. When Ben left for his job at the recycling center. When he went to a meeting in a church basement. When he sat outside on a bench near the shelter, alone, smoking, looking down. Keanu read every note. He watched all the videos too. He wasn't just looking for facts. He was looking for something familiar. A way Ben moved. A way he sat. Something that made Keanu think, "This is my family. This is my brother." But Ben didn't look like family. He looked like someone the world forgot. One night, Keanu looked at a picture. Ben was sitting on a sidewalk. His shoulders were bent forward. His face was in his hands. It was late, 2:14 in the morning. Ben had stayed outside for hours. Daniel wrote in the notes that Ben didn't eat dinner. He didn't talk to anyone. He just sat there, cold and quiet. Keanu looked at the picture for a long time. That way Ben was sitting, Keanu remembered sitting like that too. Long ago when he lost Catherine and their daughter. That kind of sitting didn't come from being bored. It came from being really, really sad inside. The next night Daniel called. He gave another update. "He works hard when he can," Daniel said. "But there's shame. He feels really bad about himself. A counselor at the halfway house says Ben doesn't talk much. He stays quiet. He never speaks in group sessions." Keanu sat back in his chair. "What does he say when people ask about his family?" Daniel sighed. "He says he never knew them. He tells people he grew up in the system. He doesn't want pity. He doesn't like questions. He says he's used to being alone." That word again. Alone. Keanu pressed his hand to his mouth. His chest felt tight. "Does he know anything about Gerard?" Keanu asked. "No," Daniel said. "As far as Ben knows, Gerard was just a name on a paper. No visits. No letters. No pictures. Nothing." Keanu closed his eyes. Their father had left Keanu's life once. And now he had done it again, to another child. But this time Ben didn't even get a name to be angry at. Just nothing. Keanu stood up and walked to his window. He looked out at the bright lights of Los Angeles. Somewhere out there, his brother, his real brother, was lying on a thin bed in a small room. Maybe wondering if anyone in the world cared about him. Keanu, a famous actor known by millions, loved by strangers, was standing alone thinking about him. "I have to meet him," Keanu whispered. But not as a famous person. As a brother. And when he would meet him, he would bring nothing but the truth. 2 days later, Keanu drove out alone. No bodyguards. No cameras. He didn't tell anyone, not even his assistant, Claire. The GPS showed the way to a small neighborhood on the east side of the city. It was a place most people didn't think about. The streets were broken and narrow. It was the kind of place where dreams didn't die, they just never came. Keanu parked a few blocks away from the halfway house. He didn't want anyone to recognize him. He didn't want this moment to be anything but quiet and real. He wore a plain hoodie and a baseball cap pulled low. He walked past old apartments until he saw the building. It was made of brick, the paint was peeling, and the ramp out front was rusty. A sign said, "Transition House." Keanu sat on a bench across the street. He just waited. People came in and out of the house. Some walked fast. Others walked slowly like they had no hope. Then around 5:30 the door opened. Ben came out. Same hoodie. Same way of walking, like he wanted to disappear. He had a bag over his shoulder. Keanu's heart beat fast. He watched Ben walk down the steps and turn the corner toward the bus stop. Ben didn't look up even once. Keanu let out a breath. It was a strange feeling. This man, his brother, had no idea someone across the street had spent weeks learning everything about him. Not to judge him, but to understand him. At the bus stop, Ben sat down. He lit a cigarette. His hand shook. His face looked tired and pale. But he was still human. Still fighting to live. Some kids walked by, laughing and loud. One of them bumped into Ben's leg. No, sorry. Ben just flinched and stayed still. Keanu wanted to cross the street. Say something. But what could he say? Hi, I'm your brother. I just found out you exist. He wasn't ready. So he stayed on the bench. He let the moment be quiet. Ben's bus came. He got on and didn't look back. Keanu stayed sitting there long after the bus was gone. For the first time in years, he felt someone else's silence mixing with his own. That night, Keanu called Daniel. No more reports, he said. I want to help him. Quietly. But I want to help. How much help? Daniel asked. Whatever it takes. Daniel paused. Then we start with trust, he said. We let him know he's not alone. That someone sees him. Keanu nodded. He looked up at the dark ceiling. Ben wasn't just a brother on paper now. He was a brother in Keanu's heart. The shelter was between an old pharmacy and a broken laundromat. Most people drove past it without even looking. The sign out front said East Haven Transition Center, but the paint was faded and peeling from too many hot summers. But today, Keanu Reeves walked toward it like it was the most important place in the world. He came alone. No bodyguards. No fans. Just a man in a gray hoodie, jeans, and an old baseball cap. It helped him hide. And more than that, it helped him feel real. He didn't want to be seen as a star. Not today. He just wanted to see Ben. Inside, the shelter was quiet. Chairs scraped. People coughed. Some talked softly. A coffee pot gurgled in the corner. A TV showed the news with no sound. Keanu stood in the doorway. He breathed in the air. It smelled like cleaning spray, sweat, and tired people. He looked around. There, at the far end of the room, sat Ben. He was slouched in a plastic chair, near a window that didn't close right. Sunlight came in and made the dust in the air shine around him. His face looked older than 34, but Keanu could still see the younger boy in him. He wore a green jacket, torn jeans, and boots that weren't tied. Keanu's stomach twisted, not from surprise but because he knew that feeling. The way Ben stared at the floor like he couldn't see it. The quiet pain of someone who had lived through too many goodbyes without ever hearing a hello. Keanu walked over to the coffee station. He poured 2 paper cups and walked slowly toward the table. Ben looked up. His eyes were sharp and careful. You lost? Ben asked. His voice was rough. Keanu shrugged. Not today. Ben looked at the second cup. That for me or just backup? Keanu placed it in front of him. I figured no one should drink shelter coffee alone. Ben looked at him suspiciously, then took the cup. He sniffed it like he thought it might blow up. Then he took a sip. He made a face. You're not from here? Ben said. No, Keanu answered. You have a program or something? No. Ben leaned back, crossing his arms. So what's your deal? People don't just show up here. Keanu thought carefully. I'm just trying to understand something. Understand what? You, Keanu said softly. Or maybe someone like you. Ben scoffed. I'm not a case study. If you're here to feel better about yourself, forget it. I'm not, Keanu said. I'm just here. Ben shook his head. He mumbled something and looked out the window. But he didn't leave. He didn't tell Keanu to go. That, Keanu thought, meant something. They sat in silence. It was awkward but not angry. Ben kept glancing at Keanu, waiting for a trick or a speech. But Keanu just sat quietly, sipping his coffee. Like they were two strangers hiding from the rain. Ben stayed tense, waiting. But nothing happened. After a while, Ben asked, Have you ever been here before? No, Keanu said. But I've been in places that felt like it. Like rehab? Keanu shook his head. No. But I know what it's like to feel like you're floating with nothing under you. Ben stared at him. You don't talk like a social worker. I'm not. Then why are you here? Keanu paused. I heard about someone who grew up without answers. And I didn't want him to be forgotten. Ben narrowed his eyes. Are you a reporter? A priest? A shrink? Keanu smiled a little. I'm not here to label you. I just thought maybe you wanted someone to talk to. Even for 10 minutes. Ben leaned back. People don't do that. Not with guys like me. You're right, Keanu said. But they should. Ben looked down, bothered by how the words made him feel. You don't know me, he said. I don't, Keanu replied. Maybe that's why I listened. Ben looked out the window again. You really think you can help someone like me? Help looks different for everyone, Keanu said. Sometimes it starts with coffee. Ben laughed a little. You're not very good at this. I'm not trying to be. They sat quietly again. A young woman came by with sandwiches. Ben waved her off. Keanu took one and quietly placed it in front of Ben without a word. After a while, Ben stood. I got to go. Group starts soon. Keanu nodded. I'll head out too. Ben paused, then added, thanks, I guess. Keanu stood and pulled something from his pocket. Before I go, he held out a small note. The writing was clean and neat. No strings. Just a thought. Ben looked at the paper. Slowly he took it. He didn't open it. He just nodded and walked toward the hallway. Keanu stayed there for a moment, watching the door close behind his brother. Ben didn't know who he really was. Not yet. And that was okay. Sometimes Keanu believes that the first thing you share isn't your name, but just being there. And sometimes that's more than enough. Outside, the sky was dark. Big clouds moved low over the city, brushing the tops of tall buildings like fingers combing through hair. Keanu put his hands into his jacket pockets and started walking. The note in Ben's hand had only 7 words. You matter more than you'll ever know. Ben didn't open the note until it was late at night. He sat on the edge of his bed in the halfway house. The air smelled like cleaning spray. Outside his door, a vending machine made a soft humming sound. Around him, he could hear the other people living there, quiet voices, footsteps, coughing, and sometimes a laugh that sounded more like someone letting out a big breath than being happy. His fingers shook a little as he opened the paper. The handwriting was neat and strong, like the person had really meant what they wrote. The words hit him hard like nothing had in years. You matter more than you'll ever know. Ben read it once, then again, and again. Something inside him moved. Just a little. Not enough to change everything, but enough to poke through the cold, heavy feeling he had inside. He tried to laugh it off, to say it was just some nice person trying to feel better about themselves. But the man hadn't asked Ben for anything. He didn't talk too much. He didn't try to fix Ben. He just sat there like he really cared. Ben folded the note again and put it under his pillow. He didn't sleep much, but that wasn't new. What was new was that for the first time in months, he woke up before his alarm. He just sat there in the dark, looking at the door, wondering if the quiet man might come back. Later, Ben sat outside on the old concrete steps of the halfway house. He still held the small paper in his hand. The words had faded a little because he kept folding and unfolding it. You matter more than you know. That was all it said. No name. No phone number. Just a sentence. It felt strange. Too kind. The note had been left under a napkin in the cup holder of a takeout tray the man gave him a week ago. Ben had almost thrown it away. Just another nice person pretending to care. But something about the man's eyes, the way he didn't look at Ben with pity, stuck in his mind. Ben turned the note over, hoping maybe there was a clue he had missed. He had grown up in places where words didn't mean much unless people wanted something from you. Everyone wanted something. So when that same man came back again one Tuesday afternoon, standing quietly at the edge of the courtyard, Ben's heart started beating faster. He stood up slowly, not scared, just tired. You again? Ben said as he walked up. You got a name this time, or are we still doing the mystery guy thing? The man smiled gently. You can call me Kevin. Ben tilted his head, eyes narrowing. Kevin, huh? So what is this? Some recovery program? Church thing? You a reporter? 'Cause I'm not doing any story. No, Kevin said. None of that. I just wanted to see how you're doing. Ben crossed his arms. Yeah. Why do you care? Kevin waited a moment, then said simply, because someone should. Ben laughed, but it wasn't funny. Man, don't act like you're here for me. You don't know me. Kevin nodded like he understood more than Ben wanted him to. You're right. I don't. But I'd like to. Ben blinked, not sure what to say. There was no big speech, no trick. He waved his arm around. What do you want to see, man? Peeling paint? Old posters about group therapy? You think I'm some story of hope? Kevin spoke quietly. No. I just think maybe it matters that someone shows up. Ben stared at him. You're weird, Kevin. You don't talk like the others. Kevin smiled again. Neither do you. And then, just like before, Kevin handed him a cup of coffee. Same as last time, cream, no sugar. Ben took it, didn't say thank you, but this time he didn't look away. The next morning, Ben walked into the community lounge, still tired from another bad night of sleep. The coffee Kevin gave him yesterday was cold now, sitting in the holder. But the note, the first one, was still in his jacket pocket. It felt like a little rock he couldn't stop noticing. He took it out and stared at it again. The handwriting wasn't perfect, but it was clear and careful. That's what bothered him. It wasn't printed. It wasn't part of a big message made for everyone. Someone had written this by hand, someone who maybe knew how hard it was to believe nice things about yourself. As he sat down with his plate of scrambled eggs, he saw a new envelope under his tray. His name, Ben, was written in big black letters on the front. He froze. No one here knew his last name like that. No one ever left him personal mail. His hands tightened as he opened it. He already felt nervous. Inside were two things. First, a folded legal paper. It said Reeves Estate Disclosure, Private Addendum. Second, a letter that looked old and worn like it had been written years ago. Ben opened the pages. His breath caught in his throat. Ben, if you're reading this, it means the estate finally did something right. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I thought about you more than you know. Life broke me in ways I couldn't fix. But you were never a mistake. You were the part one couldn't face. You have a brother. His name is Keanu. You've probably seen him on TV. He never knew about you, not until recently. I told no one. I didn't think I deserved to. But he's not like me. He's better. Kinder. If he reaches out, it's real. Be better than me. I'm sorry I wasn't there to say this to you in person. Gerard Reeves. Ben's hand shook. He read it again and again. It couldn't be true. Keanu Reeves? No. No way. This had to be a joke. A trick. A scam. His blood boiled. He rushed outside looking for Kevin. The man was sitting on the same bench across the alley like he'd been waiting. Ben ran up to him, fists clenched. You think this is funny? He yelled. Kevin didn't move. I didn't want to hurt you. Ben shoved the letter at him. You think I'm gonna believe this trash? Kevin's voice stayed calm. I don't expect anything from you. I just want you to know the truth. Ben's eyes burned. You think you can show up with a coffee and blow up my life? I've been lied to before, man. People always show up pretending to care. It always ends the same. Kevin stood up slowly. I left you something else. In the envelope. Ben looked confused. What? Check the back. Ben turned it over. Hidden behind the legal letter was a sealed medical envelope. It said, DNA confirmation. Ben held it. His breath came fast. He didn't open it. Not yet. The words DNA confirmation felt like a big red button. He clenched his jaw and stepped back. This is crazy. I know, Kevin said gently. But that doesn't mean it's not true. Ben turned away and walked down the alley trying to think. His thoughts were crashing into each other. He couldn't believe this. Keanu Reeves, a famous actor, was supposed to be his brother? No way. But Kevin didn't chase him. He just waited. Gave him space. Ben looked at the envelope in his hand. He didn't open it yet. He wanted to tear it up, scream, throw it away. But instead, he tucked it into his hoodie pocket like keeping it close would protect him. He walked back to the shelter without saying a word. Inside his small room, Ben sat on the edge of his bed. It wasn't big, just enough for a dresser and chair. The kind of place you end up when life burns all your bridges. He stared at the envelope in his lap. Finally, he opened it. There was one page inside. It had test results. It said, Subject A, Ben M. Reeves. Subject B, Keanu C. Reeves. Result, confirmed half-siblings, 99.94% probability. Ben blinked. Read it again. And again. His chest felt tight. He slid down to the floor. Tears came, quiet, soft tears. Not because of the name on the paper, but because, for the first time in his life, someone had looked for him. Someone had cared enough to find him. He didn't know if he felt mad or thankful. He didn't know if he believed in family or fate. But he knew one thing now. Kevin wasn't just a kind stranger. He was his brother. Ben couldn't breathe. He didn't even know he had been holding his breath. He rushed outside into the night. The city lights felt fake and the street sounds were too loud, like the world had no skin anymore. That letter. That name. That face. He had thrown the papers down in anger after Keanu left. He had shouted at the man, called him names in front of everyone. Rich people games, he said. Just another trick. But late that night, when the lights in the dorm room dimmed and everyone else was asleep, Ben snuck back downstairs. The envelope was still there. No one had touched it, like it was waiting for him. He opened it again. Read the letter from Gerard. Held the DNA paper like it might hurt him. Then he ran. For 3 days Ben disappeared. No one knew where he went. Some people thought he used drugs again and was sleeping on a couch somewhere. Others figured he had become another lost person, forgotten in the system. But Ben didn't go far. The first night he stayed at an all-night laundromat in South Central. He drank cheap vodka from a bottle hidden in his coat and stared at the washing machines. He didn't move. He didn't talk. He didn't sleep. He just kept thinking. Keanu Reeves, the man from the movies, the guy who seemed like he was from another world. Was he his brother? It was too much, too strange, too painful. Ben kept thinking about his childhood. The broken trailer, the bugs, the yelling, the time his mom left him alone for a week with nothing but mustard packets and old bread. He remembered being locked in a closet crying. He remembered how small he felt when boots hit the stairs outside. He had learned early, don't expect good things. Love was fake. Family was a lie. So what was this? And yet, he remembered Keanu's eyes. That quiet look. The note. You matter more than you know. Ben laughed a little, but it hurt. Why would anyone believe that about me? He whispered. The next night he slept in the stairwell of a church, curled up like a ball, cold and shaking. A homeless woman gave him a granola bar. She didn't ask anything. She just said, God's got a weird way of showing up when you least want him to. Ben almost laughed, almost cried. On the third day he found himself walking slowly through Griffith Park. Ben's eyes looked tired and his breathing was slow. For the first time he didn't want to hide from the pain. He wanted to know why it was there. Keanu hadn't said much, but what he did say was honest. He didn't try to make Ben feel bad or push him to do anything. He just showed Ben something he had never been given before, a way out, maybe even a way to feel safe again. And that scared Ben more than anything. Keanu waited. 3 days went by, then 4. No calls, no messages, no sign of Ben. Keanu could have sent someone to find him. He could have called the shelter and asked where Ben was. But he didn't. Keanu knew what it was like to be quiet for a long time. He knew how silence could feel like a heavy hug, one that makes it hard to breathe. So he waited, not angry but patient. Claire, his helper, brought him coffee one morning. She found Keanu sitting outside on his balcony, holding a letter from Gerard. You've read that letter how many times now? She asked gently. Enough, Keanu said. But it's not about what he wrote. It's about what he didn't write. Claire sat next to him. He never talked about his son. Not once. Keanu nodded. And now, suddenly, there's a name and a photo in this folder, like Ben was always there, just hidden. He paused and asked softly, Do you think I'm doing the right thing? Claire didn't answer right away. Then she said, That depends. Are you trying to fix what your dad did wrong, or are you trying to care about someone your dad never could? Keanu looked out at the city skyline. I don't know yet, he said. But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see a stranger. That afternoon, Keanu went back to the shelter to see if Ben had returned. Someone there thought they had seen him sleeping on a bench at Echo Park, but they weren't sure. Keanu didn't chase after him. He went back home and put the letter, the DNA paper, and the photo in a small box. He didn't lock it. He didn't hide it. He just left it open. Keanu knew about sadness. He knew what it felt like to be alone and wondered if anyone would care if you were gone. That's why he wasn't scared that Ben was running. Sometimes running is part of healing. Is part of the journey back to feeling okay. But even as he waited, Keanu said a quiet prayer. Not a fancy one, just something simple. If he's out there, let him feel like he matters tonight. At night, Keanu walked around his house, thinking about the half-brother who didn't know yet how much space Keanu had already made for him. On the 5th day, Keanu went to the shelter again. Ben still wasn't there. Keanu left something behind, a little note, folded small, and placed on the same chair Ben had once sat in. It said, I know what it feels like to run. I also know what it means when someone stays. That night, Keanu couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, lit a candle, and watched the little flame dance. He thought about the boy nobody had come for, and he hoped Ben might still choose to come back. On the 7th day, Ben came back, but not to the shelter or to Keanu's house. He went to a small, quiet church in Silver Lake. It was old, not fancy, and mostly empty during the week. One of the people there saw Ben and remembered his picture from a missing person flyer. They called the shelter. A staff member told Keanu. He didn't rush. He waited until the sun started to go down and then drove there himself. The church was very quiet. Only a janitor was there, slowly cleaning. Keanu walked inside, not sure what he would find. Ben was sitting in the last row of chairs. His hoodie was up and he stared at a colorful window with pictures on it. The only light was a small, glowing exit sign. Keanu didn't say anything. He just sat down a few seats away from Ben. After a long silence, Ben said, "You're real." Keanu nodded once. "So are you." Ben gave a little laugh, but it wasn't happy. His hands were shaking as he pulled a crumpled letter from his pocket. The DNA paper was still inside. "Why are you doing this?" Ben asked, still looking straight ahead. "You could have ignored it. No one would blame you." Keanu thought for a moment. "Because I know what it feels like to be forgotten by someone who was supposed to love you." Ben looked at him for the first time. His eyes were red, full of tears and sadness and a little bit of something softer. "You don't know anything about me," he said. "No," Keanu said gently. "But I'd like to." Ben clenched his teeth. "I'm a mess. You don't want this. I've been arrested. I've hurt people. I've stolen things. I've slept outside in alleys. I've seen the worst parts of myself and I was okay with it. Don't come here with your perfect life and treat me like I'm your charity case." Keanu leaned forward. "You're not a project, Ben. You're a person. Brother. I didn't come to fix you. I came to find you." Ben's lip shook. He looked away and wiped his face with his sleeve. Keanu waited quietly. "I didn't ask for this," Ben whispered. "I know. I don't know how to be anyone's family." "You don't have to be perfect," Keanu said. "You just have to be honest." Ben gripped the edge of the chair tightly. His hands were so tight that his knuckles turned white. "I don't want to mess this up," he said, his voice breaking. Keanu turned to him. "Then don't. Let it be what it is, two people trying to understand something bigger than both of them." Ben looked down and whispered, "Do you really want me in your life?" Keanu didn't pause. "I already made room for you." That was the beginning. Not healing, not yet, but something new, something open. Ben didn't move in with Keanu, not right away. But he started showing up. At the shelter, at the little coffee shop on Sunset where Keanu sometimes sat writing in a notebook. Sometimes Ben didn't talk. He just sat across from Keanu, drinking coffee and staring out the window. Keanu didn't push. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is just sit and not leave. That's what Keanu did. That's how Ben started to believe. One morning, Keanu stood at the edge of a quiet movie studio lot. The air was foggy, just like how his mind felt when he thought about his dad, Gerard. That name still felt heavy, not because Gerard was there, but because he had been gone. Gerard didn't answer letters. He didn't show up. He didn't care. Keanu remembered being a little boy watching other dads pick up their kids after school. Some were tired. Some were in a hurry. Some were kind. Keanu didn't want a rich or loud dad. He wanted one who listened, who helped carry a backpack or tied a shoelace. Gerard was never like that. Not for Keanu, not for Ben. That's what hurt the most. Ben hadn't just gotten the same dad. He got the same emptiness. But it wasn't just the DNA that made them brothers. It was the loss they both shared. Keanu leaned on the wall and let the quiet morning settle. He wasn't here to fix Ben. He had learned that slowly but clearly. He wasn't here to save him or make up for what Gerard didn't do. He was here to be something new, something they had never gotten. A brother who stayed. A voice that called. A person who didn't leave when things got hard. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A known number. He had a feeling who it was. He answered softly, "Hello?" There was some static. Then a breath. Then a rough voice like someone who had cried a lot. "Is this the guy from the coffee shop?" Keanu didn't speak right away. He knew the voice. "Ben?" "Yes," Keanu said gently. There was a pause. "Why are you doing this?" Ben asked. His voice didn't sound angry, just tired. "You don't owe me anything. I'm a screw-up. A ghost." Keanu spoke quietly, calmly. "I'm doing this because someone should have a long time ago." The silence after that wasn't scary. It felt like there was space for something new. "Okay," Ben whispered. It wasn't a yes. It wasn't giving up. But it was something. Keanu stayed on the phone. He didn't talk too much. He didn't try to fix everything. He just stayed. And this time that was enough. After that, Ben didn't talk a lot. But that was okay. The silence meant something now. It meant someone was listening. It meant there was a place to land. A week later, Ben called again. His voice was stronger now, but still a little unsure. "I've been thinking about that letter," he said. Keanu sat up. "Yeah. I read it like 20 times, Ben said. "I don't know if I believe it. That I'm really your brother. That someone like you would even want that." Keanu smiled a little, even though Ben couldn't see it. I didn't want to believe it either. Not at first. But now, it's ours. Ben paused. I don't know how to do anything. Brother. A person. Some people call it family. You don't have to know, Keanu said. You just have to show up. Ben let out a slow breath. Then a quiet laugh. It's harder than it sounds. I know, Keanu said. But you already did it. There was another quiet pause, this one soft like a thread tying them together. Then Ben asked, a little shy, do you remember what you wrote on that note? Keanu leaned back in his chair. You matter more than you know. Ben's voice broke. No one's ever said that to me. Not like that. Keanu's throat got tight. They should have. A long time ago. The phone call ended, but neither of them felt alone. They didn't have to talk a lot. They were beginning something new, not as someone saving the other, but as brothers. And this time no one was leaving. That weekend, Keanu drove to the edge of the city where the halfway house was. He didn't text. He just parked and sat for a moment watching the clouds. Then he got out of the car. Ben was already outside, sitting on the steps with a coffee cup in his hand. Same old lid. Same half-full drink. But something was different in how he sat. It wasn't pride, but it was a presence. He was really there. And Keanu smiled. When Keanu came close, Ben didn't jump or look scared. Hey, Ben said. Keanu nodded. Hey. They sat quietly for a long time. A big truck drove past. A dog barked far away. The wind moved the leaves in the trees. Finally Ben spoke. You don't look like him, he said quietly. Keanu tilted his head. That's a good thing, he said. Ben gave a small laugh. It was quick, but it was real. You think about him a lot? Not anymore, Keanu said. But the pain, yeah. I still carry that. Ben looked down at the cup in his hands. I always wondered what kind of man would leave me behind. Keanu waited, then said, the kind of man who didn't love himself. So he didn't know how to love anyone else. Ben nodded slowly. The words made sense in his heart. After a while he added, I hated him, you know. Even before I knew who he was. I hated not having a face to be angry at. Keanu leaned forward, putting his elbows on his knees. I did too. But hate is heavy. And it doesn't make the pain go away. It just makes it worse. Ben looked at him from the side. So what do you do with it? Keanu's voice was soft but strong. You let go of the father, and become the man he wasn't. Ben didn't say anything. His hands shook a little, but he held his cup tightly, not from fear but to focus. Keanu stood up. Walk with me. Ben waited a moment, then stood too. They walked side by side down the broken sidewalk. They didn't talk. They didn't hurry. When they reached the end of the block, Keanu stopped. He turned to Ben and said something, not from sadness or guilt, but from their bond as family. You don't owe me anything, Ben. But if you're ready, I'd like to get to know you. Ben looked at him. Not the movie star. Not the famous guy. Just the man, the one who stayed. And for the first time in a long while, Ben nodded. Yeah, he said. Me too. They kept walking. Two brothers, not fully healed, but not alone anymore. The next time Ben saw Keanu, it wasn't across the shelter yard. It wasn't through tired eyes during the night. It was in a quiet little park behind an old shopping strip in East Hollywood. The grass was patchy. The benches were old and cracked. A rusty swing made creaky sounds in the wind. Someone's forgotten hoodie hung on a fence. Keanu was sitting on a bench under a crooked purple tree. He had a white paper bag next to him and one in his hands. He wasn't dressed fancy, black jeans, a soft hoodie, and old boots. But he looked like he belonged there. Ben walked over slowly. His hands were deep in his jacket pockets. He looked around like he thought someone might jump out. Maybe a camera crew or reporters. But there was no one. Just Keanu waiting, holding out food. I brought burgers, Keanu said. He didn't stand up. I didn't know what you liked, so I guessed. Ben looked at the bag like it might disappear. You guessed. Keanu gave a tiny smile. Medium rare. Extra onions. It was a wild guess. Ben sat down slowly. Not too close. But not too far. He opened the warm bag with shaky fingers. Inside was a double cheeseburger, thick fries, and a little container of pickles. There were no cameras. No reporters. No speech. They ate quietly for a while. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. I haven't had a sit-down meal in a long time, Ben said. You're sitting now, Keanu replied softly. Ben didn't laugh, but his face relaxed a little. He looked at the burger like it was magic. You always eat in parks with strangers? He asked, chewing. Keanu shrugged. Only the ones who aren't strangers. Ben stopped. The air felt still. Leaves rustled above them. I used to pretend I had a brother, Ben said, not looking up. Keanu nodded and set down his fries. Me too. Ben frowned but said nothing. He looked at the paper bag like it could explain something. Keanu didn't ask more. He let the moment stay just as it was, awkward but real. And for Ben, that was more than he'd had in a long time. Ben didn't talk much and Keanu didn't make him. They sat with their food between them. There was a soft sound of cars behind the trees. The smell of grass and grilled food was in the air. Keanu watched how Ben ate. Not quickly. Not like he was hiding. But like someone who hadn't had a warm meal in a long time. Ben didn't waste a bite. He didn't say thank you. But he didn't have to. Keanu had seen hunger before. Not just in the belly but deep in the soul. And Ben had that kind of hunger. You know, Ben said later, wiping his hands, I always told myself I didn't care. About what? Keanu asked gently. Family. Being related. All of it. Ben looked out at the sidewalk. Told myself it didn't matter. That meant nothing. Keanu didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said quietly, and now? Ben swallowed hard. Now, I'm not so sure. His eyes held a flicker of something. Maybe anger, maybe fear. But underneath there was something softer. Something hurt but still there. I used to watch interviews of you, Ben said, still not looking at Keanu. Not a lot. Just sometimes. When the shelter TV showed it. Keanu sat still. I'd hear people say how kind you were, Ben continued. How normal you were. How you weren't like other stars. He gave a bitter smile. I didn't believe it. Thought it was fake. Thought no one could be that good. Keanu nodded. I'm not good. I'm trying. Ben looked at him, really looked, like he wanted to see past the movie posters and the screen. Why me? He asked suddenly. Why do you even care? Keanu didn't answer right away. He looked at a family walking far away. A father holding his daughter's hand. The girl held a juice box in the other. Because you matter, Keanu said at last. Because no one ever told you that, and they should have. Ben blinked. His jaw tightened. And because I know how it feels, Keanu added. To be forgotten by someone who should have stayed. Ben looked away. His voice was low. You mean, Dad? Keanu didn't pause. Yeah, him. There was silence again. But it didn't feel empty. It felt like something new was beginning. Like healing. Ben leaned back on the bench. His legs stretched out. His arms crossed. His face was hard to read, part angry, part tired. You really believe that? That I matter? Keanu didn't rush his answer. He took a slow sip from his drink. Then I looked at Ben with calm eyes. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Ben gave a soft laugh, not mean, just surprised. You don't know me. Not really. I've done things. Bad things. Things you can't undo. Keanu nodded. I know pain makes people do things. I've done things I'm not proud of too. We all have a story. Ben turned to him. What, like you stole a candy bar once? Keanu smiled gently. No. Like I built walls so high I couldn't see anyone. Pushed people away who cared. Hide in silence because it was easier than explaining the storm inside me. Ben was quiet. The air felt heavy but honest. Then Ben whispered, I used to pretend I had a brother. Keanu blinked. Yeah, Ben said. When I was in that group home in Albuquerque, the one with broken windows, I used to lie in bed and pretend someone would come get me. Say, hey kid, pack your stuff. I'm your big brother. You're coming home. Keanu's throat felt tight. I used to imagine I had a little brother, he said. Someone to talk to when the world is too quiet. Someone who'd understand the noise in my head. Ben didn't speak. He stared straight ahead. But his jaw relaxed. Keanu reached into his coat and pulled out a small card. Here, he said. It has my number. No pressure. If you need anything, or even nothing, it's okay. Ben took it slowly. He looked at it. Is this real? It's me, Keanu said. No assistant. No agent. Just me. Ben didn't move at first. Then he gently put the card in his pocket. When they stood up, it wasn't dramatic. No big goodbye. Just two men walking slowly down a path. Ben stopped before turning away. Thanks for the burger. Keanu smiled softly. Anytime. And for the first time that day, Ben smiled back. Just a tiny smile. But it was real. Something small had melted. And it was enough. Keanu gave a small, quiet smile, then turned and walked away, leaving the decision in Ben's hands. Later that night, Ben sat on his small cot in the halfway house, looking at a pamphlet under the flickering light. He read the words over and over again, almost as if the meaning could change each time. Healing isn't linear, the word said. It's possible. He didn't make any phone calls. He didn't text Keanu. But he didn't throw away the pamphlet either. Instead, he folded it neatly and placed it inside the only book he owned, an old, torn paperback of Mice and Men. He set the book next to his bed. For the first time in a long time, Ben didn't feel like he was a burden to anyone. He felt, maybe, just maybe, like someone who could be helped. And in the quiet of the room he whispered, "Okay, I'll try." The next morning Ben made the decision to go. It wasn't a big dramatic moment. There was no speech. There was no cheering or fanfare. Just a soft knock on Keanu's door, followed by a quiet voice saying, "If that offer still stands, I'll go." Keanu looked up from the couch, his heart caught for a moment. He didn't rush over to hug Ben, didn't smile too wide. He just nodded once and stood up. "All right," Keanu said simply. Ben rubbed the back of his neck, trying to find the right words. "But there's one thing," he said quickly. "You don't get to fix me. I'm not your project." Keanu didn't flinch or get upset. "Deal?" he said calmly. "I'm not trying to fix you. I just want you to have the choice." That made all the difference to Ben. By noon, they were packed into Keanu's car, heading north toward a rehab center in the hills outside Santa Barbara. It wasn't one of those big, cold, scary hospitals. This place was quiet, tucked away between trees. Keanu had helped fund the center years ago, after losing a friend to addiction. As they drove, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was different. They didn't talk about big, serious things like rehab or addiction. Instead, the conversation turned to lighter topics. They talked about favorite movies, silly names for pets, the worst diner food they had ever eaten, and even a book Ben had found in a bus station once. The book had helped him see people in a different way. Keanu listened to Ben, asking questions but never pushing. Ben leaned his head against the window, watching the trees rush by. "What if I mess this up again?" Ben asked after a while, his voice full of worry. Keanu kept his eyes on the road, steady and calm. "Then I'll still be here," he said simply. There was a long pause. Ben turned his head to look at Keanu, studying his profile. Keanu didn't answer right away. He let the question hang in the air, letting Ben think about it. "Because someone should have been there for you," Keanu finally added, his voice soft but firm. Ben gasped, feeling something shift inside him. Keanu nodded slightly. "Yeah, that. And because I believe you're more than your worst moment." Ben swallowed hard, staring out the window. The car rolled on, smooth and steady, with the road stretching out in front of them. Neither of them spoke for a while, but something had changed. Not fixed. Not healed. But something had opened inside Ben. And that, for him, was already more than he expected. They stopped for gas in a small, sleepy town just off Highway 154. Ben stepped out of the car, stretching his legs like someone who hadn't moved in a while. He wandered into the small gas station store and came back with 2 chocolate bars and a paper cup of coffee. "Peace offering," he mumbled, handing one of the chocolate bars to Keanu. "For what?" Keanu asked, taking it with a smile. "For being a jerk," Ben said. Then quickly adding, "For weeks, months, years. Take your pick." Keanu peeled the wrapper slowly but didn't rush. "You were just surviving," he said. "Sometimes surviving looks like damage. Doesn't mean it was wrong to feel it." Ben looked at him, unsure of what to feel. He couldn't decide if he was touched or confused. "You don't talk like normal people." Keanu chuckled softly. "That's what people say about me all the time." Back on the road, the miles seemed to pass quicker. A valley of wildflowers stretched outside Ben's window, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel trapped. "You know," Ben said after a while, "this place, this treatment center, it doesn't feel like a punishment." "It's not," Keanu replied. "It's an invitation." "Invitation to what?" Ben asked, still trying to figure it out. "To come back to yourself," Keanu said. Ben didn't answer right away, but he turned his head to look at Keanu. His eyes narrowed as if he was seeing him in a new way, not as a famous actor, not as a symbol, but as a man who understood pain and never stopped trying to bring light. "Do people ever ask you why you care so much?" Ben asked quietly. "All the time," Keanu replied. "And what do you tell them?" Keanu glanced over at Ben, sunlight spilling across his face from the windshield. "I tell them the truth," he said. "Because someone cared when they didn't have to, and that saved me." Ben didn't say anything after that. He just leaned back in his seat, the chocolate bar still sitting unopened in his lap. It felt like a small, simple thing, earned not from speeches or pity, but from just being there. And maybe Ben thought that was enough for today. The car turned onto a winding road surrounded by towering redwoods. It didn't feel like a rehab center at all. It felt more like a quiet retreat, a peaceful place to heal. At the entrance the sign said, Marigold Path, healing starts here. Ben squinted through the windshield. You've been here before? He asked Keanu. Keanu nodded. Yeah. I helped fund this place years ago, after a friend of mine couldn't find a place that treated people with dignity. They pulled up to the gate and a quiet nurse greeted them. She had soft eyes and didn't seem shocked to see Keanu. There were no cameras, no loud voices, just a kind nurse holding a clipboard. She asked Ben one simple question. Are you ready? Ben hesitated, looking around at the trees, the sky, the gravel under his shoes. No, he said honestly. But I'm willing. The nurse smiled warmly. That's enough, she said. Keanu helped with the paperwork, but he didn't hover. He gave Ben space to breathe. As they stood at the gate, Ben turned to Keanu, his shoulders tense. What if I mess this up? Ben asked, his voice full of worry. Keanu placed a gentle hand on Ben's shoulder. Then I'll still be here. Ben's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded and walked inside. Keanu stayed at the gate, watching quietly. He wasn't there to control what would happen. He was there to honor the moment. It was the beginning. Quiet, fragile, but real. The days at the rehab center were tough. The second week of detox was harder than Ben had expected. The shaking from withdrawal was still there, but now something else was coming up. Old feelings, memories that he had been trying to bury, started to rise to the surface. Guilt. Shame. A voice inside telling him that he wasn't worth saving. On the third morning, Ben refused to eat breakfast. He wouldn't leave his room. He told the counselor to leave him alone. But that afternoon he heard a knock on his door. 2 soft taps, the kind that only Keanu ever did. Keanu stepped into the room holding 2 steaming paper cups. Mint tea, he said with a small smile. Not the hospital kind. I brought it from a place down the road. Ben took the tea slowly. His hand still shook. He didn't say thank you. He didn't have the words yet, but he sipped the tea. They sat across from each other, quietly. Keanu glanced over at the guitar that was leaning in the corner of the room. You play? Keanu asked. Ben shook his head. Used to, before all of this. Keanu didn't press him. He just nodded. I get it. Ben finally looked at him. Why are you doing this? Keanu paused. He didn't rush to answer. Because someone should have, he said quietly. Ben's throat tightened and he looked away. He didn't know how to respond. It wasn't something he had ever heard before. Keanu continued, this isn't about fixing you or saving you. I'm not here because you're my project. I'm here because you're my brother. Ben let the word brother hang in the air. It didn't feel real to him. I don't remember having a family, Ben said quietly. Foster care, halfway homes, sleeping in cars. That was my reality. Nobody showed up. Not once. Keanu nodded slowly, his voice gentle. Yeah, I know what that's like. It was different for me, but the ache is the same. Ben looked at him, searching his face. But you had everything, he said softly. Keanu didn't flinch. Not really. Not when it mattered. My father left when I was 3. My mom did her best, but I still had nights where I felt invisible. Then I lost my daughter. I lost her mother. I watched my sister fight for her life. Keanu let the word settle before adding, pain doesn't care about money, and healing doesn't come from pretending it didn't happen. Ben swallowed hard. The guard he had put up for so long began to lower. I messed up so many times, he whispered. 6 rehab stints. None of them worked. Every time I thought it was my last chance, I failed. Keanu looked at him, not with pity, but with understanding. This isn't your last shot, he said gently. It's just the next one. That's all it has to be. Ben looked up at him, his eyes filled with doubt. And if I fail again? Keanu didn't hesitate. Then I'll still be here. Ben leaned back against his pillow, blinking fast to hold in his tears. Nobody had ever said that to him before. For the first time in his life, he started to believe he might be worth something. By the end of the 3rd week, Ben had begun to change. The rain came down, making the windows blur with drops. The sound of the world outside felt far away. Ben sat by the window, wrapped in a warm blanket, thinking quietly. He hadn't said much that day, but when Keanu came in, soaked from the rain, he smiled slightly. You walked here? Ben asked, surprised. Keanu shook the water off his sleeves. Yeah, it felt right. Ben cracked a grin. You're insane. Keanu smiled back. Most of the good ones are. They sat quietly again. No plans. No pressure. Just presence. And later, as Keanu read aloud in a soft voice, Ben closed his eyes, letting the words fill him up. It wasn't a perfect journey, but it was a start. And for the first time in his life, Ben began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was worth saving. He sat down across from Ben and looked at him kindly but firmly. "You weren't a mistake," he said. "You were the reason I answered that letter. I didn't know why at first, but now I do." Ben didn't say anything. He couldn't. He just held his journal in his lap and looked down. Then for the first time in years he cried. Not because he felt bad, but because someone saw him for who he really was and still loved him. The days after were quieter, but not in a bad way. Something had changed between them. The silences weren't awkward anymore. They were real. Ben stopped trying to make Keanu think he was okay, and Keanu never judged him. He was just there. One afternoon, Ben asked if they could walk on the trail behind the rehab center. It was just a simple dirt path with trees and some flowers, but for Ben, who had spent most of his life in busy city streets and inside buildings, it felt like a different world. They walked in silence at first. Ben kept his hands in his pockets, looking down, kicking dust with his boots. Keanu walked at his pace, giving him space to talk if he wanted to. Finally, Ben broke the silence. "Do you ever feel like your whole life is just one big apology?" Keanu thought for a moment and nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "I used to." Ben nodded like that was the answer he needed. "I kept thinking," he said, "that if I was better or stronger, maybe my mom wouldn't have left. Maybe the foster homes would have kept me longer. Maybe I wouldn't have ended up." He stopped talking. Keanu didn't let him fall into that sad thought. "You were just a kid, Ben. None of that was your fault." Ben blinked. "Yeah, well, it doesn't feel like it," he said. They stopped walking. Keanu picked up a smooth stone from the ground and turned it over in his hand. "You know what I've learned?" he asked. "Shame is like carrying someone else's stuff and thinking it's yours. You didn't pack that weight. You just got stuck carrying it." Ben looked at him, really looked at him, and something inside him changed. "Not the kind of break that hurts, the kind that lets light in," he thought. "I didn't know people like you talked like this," Ben said. Keanu smiled. "People like me?" "Yeah, like Hollywood stars," Ben said. Keanu chuckled softly. "That's just a job." "This," he said, pointing to the quiet around them, "this is life." Ben didn't say anything right away, but when they started walking again, he walked closer to Keanu. Not ahead. Not behind. Right beside him. And for the first time, Ben didn't feel like a project or someone to fix. He felt like a brother. Later that evening, Ben went back to his room and pulled out his journal. He stared at the blank page, not sure what to write. Then, slowly, he began to write. This time, the words weren't full of anger or sadness. They were different. They were honest and real. He didn't write for anyone else. Just for himself. Keanu knocked softly at the door, holding 2 cups of tea. Ben nodded and Keanu came in. The room was dim and calm, a safe place. "I wrote something," Ben said after a moment. "Not the sad stuff, just stuff." Keanu didn't push him. He sat and waited. Ben handed him the journal. On the new page, in messy handwriting, Ben had written, "Today, I walked beside someone who didn't see me as broken. He saw me as enough. Maybe the mistake wasn't mine. Maybe it was believing I didn't belong anywhere. But today I did." Keanu blinked slowly and set the journal in his lap. He looked at Ben, not like a project, not with pity, but with deep understanding. "I meant what I said before," Keanu whispered. "You were the reason I answered that letter. I didn't do it out of guilt. I did it because something told me I wasn't supposed to walk this path alone." Ben's voice was quiet, barely a whisper. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything," Keanu said gently. "Just stay." Ben covered his face with one hand, his shoulders shaking, but not from shame. He felt like something heavy had been lifted. And Keanu didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. They sat together in the quiet. It wasn't awkward, just peaceful. Something powerful grew between them, built not on family or obligation, but on simply being there for each other. Later that night, Ben wrote one more line in his journal before turning off the light. "I think I'm starting to believe that I was never a mistake, just a story that hasn't been finished yet." The next morning, the air was fresh with the smell of pine trees and birds singing far away. Keanu was tying his boots at the edge of the rehab center property. He looked back at the building where Ben was standing, unsure of whether to follow. After a moment, Ben took a step forward. No words. Just the sound of gravel crunching under his boots. Slowly, he walked up beside Keanu. They had talked about this hike for a week. Ben was stronger now. He didn't look as pale and his hands didn't shake as much. His shoulders were higher and his eyes, even though they were still cautious, didn't look away as much. The trail led up into the hills, with trees that were warm from the sun and the smell of damp earth in the air. Keanu didn't walk too far ahead. He stayed beside Ben, walking at his pace, pausing when Ben needed to. Keanu had learned the power of silence after losing Catherine, then his daughter, and after his sister got sick. In those moments, talking didn't feel right. But silence could hold pain without judging. Silence gave space for healing. Ben didn't ask where they were going. He just walked, as if the trail knew the heavy feelings he carried. His breath was steady now. His legs didn't shake. At one point, Keanu pointed to a flat rock by a stream and they both sat down. The sound of the water was soft and constant. Ben picked up a small stone, turned it over in his fingers and put it back down. Minutes passed. Keanu didn't rush him. He just sat, looking ahead, his hands resting calmly in his lap. Then Ben spoke, almost like he was talking to the trees. "I tried to kill myself once." Keanu looked at him slowly. He didn't look shocked. He just listened. "I was 17. Foster home number 7. I thought I'd jump from a bridge. No one would have noticed." Ben's voice broke, not from weakness but from saying it out loud for the first time. Keanu gently put his hand on Ben's shoulder. Not to fix anything but just to be there. Ben didn't look at him. He stared ahead, his eyes glassy but dry. "But I didn't," he whispered. "And I didn't know why until now." They sat like that with the wind around them. Two men not connected by shared memories but by the choice to stay. In the quiet, something was understood without words. Ben stayed sitting on the rock, his fingers tightly holding each other. He didn't move or speak. It was like saying what he had felt for so long had changed something inside him. Keanu didn't interrupt the stillness. He knew how sacred silence could be. How sometimes just being there mattered more than anything else. A hawk circled high above them, calling out. The forest around them was alive, but in a quiet way. The wind moved through the leaves. The creek whispered over the stones. It wasn't empty. It was full without noise. Finally, Ben took a deep breath and said quietly, "I used to think silence was punishment. Like being invisible. Like screaming in a crowded room and nobody listens." Keanu nodded slowly. "I used to think that too." Ben turned surprised. "You? After Catherine. After my daughter. After my sister's fight with cancer," Keanu said softly. "It wasn't just a loss. It was disappearing. Even me. I'd go whole days without speaking. People thought I was being private, but I just didn't know if my voice still belonged in the world." Ben looked at him, seeing not the famous actor, but someone who had known a silence deeper than pain. Keanu pointed around them. "But out here I realized something. Silence isn't empty. It's honest. It's where the soul finally has room to stretch. You don't have to pretend you're okay or hide your pain. You just get to be." Ben swallowed hard. "And what if it hurts?" "Then you let it hurt," Keanu said softly. "Until it doesn't anymore." They were quiet for a while. Not awkward, just full. Ben shifted on the rock, his body a little more open now. "I always thought my brother would be someone with all the answers. Someone who had everything figured out." Keanu smiled faintly. "Then I would have disappointed you anyway." They both laughed, a real laugh this time. Ben looked down at his hands. "You think I can really change?" "I think you already are," Keanu said. "You're here. That counts." Ben nodded slowly, thinking about it. Then he looked up at the trees. "You come out here a lot?" he asked. "When I need to hear something," Keanu answered. "Like what?" Keanu took a breath. "That I'm still alive. That life hasn't given up on me even when I've wanted to give up on it." Ben let that sink in. He looked at the sky, then closed his eyes for a moment. In the quiet, something inside him shifted. It wasn't a miracle, but it was something real. They didn't talk much after that. They didn't need to. They just sat together, watching the sun sink lower behind the trees. The light turned soft and golden, spilling over the leaves like liquid grace. Every now and then, Ben would glance at Keanu, not to say anything, just to make sure he was really there. And Keanu was. He was there beside him. Keanu leaned back, resting on his palms, breathing deeply. Ben did the same without even realizing it. For the first time in years, his body wasn't tense. His shoulders were relaxed. His hands weren't clenched. His mind, usually racing with thoughts, was calm. It wasn't a big moment of happiness or joy. It was just a peaceful feeling that came and asked for nothing in return. They watched a family of deer move quietly through the trees. Ben pointed to them, smiling softly, and Keanu nodded. There was something healing about seeing gentle things. Not just surviving, but thriving in a world that could be loud and cruel. Ben broke the silence with a soft confession. "You know, I don't think I've ever watched a sunset without thinking about what I had to do next." Keanu looked at him and Ben said, "But today, I don't know. I just don't feel lost anymore." Keanu smiled. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real. That's a start. Ben hesitated, then asked, what if everything comes back tomorrow? The shame, the voices in my head, the feelings. Keanu didn't hesitate. Then we sit here again. As many times as it takes. Ben's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't cry. Instead, he nodded and turned back to the sunset. They stayed there long after the sun had set, the darkness coming gently, like a soft blanket. Not the kind that smothers you, but the kind that says, you're still here. You made it through another day. Eventually, Keanu stood and offered his hand. Ben took it. They didn't need to talk on the walk back. They just walked together. The path ahead was long and unknown, but for the first time, Ben didn't have to walk it alone. And that was enough. Later, in the quiet of the evening, a man who once thought he was a mistake realized he was not. He didn't say it out loud, but his silence said it for him. Keanu thought about what he wanted to say for a long time. He didn't try to run away from the hard things in his life. He just kept moving forward, and slowly, it became part of who he was, but it didn't control him. He looked at Ben and said, you don't have to stay the way other people think you should be. You can choose who you want to be now. Ben blinked and his jaw shook. He asked, do you ever feel like you don't deserve the good things you have? Keanu nodded and said, all the time. But that's not the point. The point is what you do with it. Ben looked at the photo on the table again. He picked it up, not really believing that it was him in the picture, or that he really belonged next to someone like Keanu. He wanted to believe that the blood they shared wasn't just something painful, but something special. Keanu leaned forward a little and said, if you want to carry the name Reeves, then carry it. Not because of me. Not because of Gerard. Carry it because it's yours and because you decide what it means from now on. Ben slowly nodded, thinking it over. I think I'd like that, he said quietly. Keanu smiled a little and said, then it's done. That night, Ben wrote a letter. It wasn't for Keanu. He would give him that one later. This one was for himself, or maybe for the part of him he was finally letting go. He wrote his name at the top, Ben Reeves. Then he wrote, I am not forgotten. I'm not what they said I was. I'm not who I used to be. I am the brother someone chose to find. The next morning, Ben went into the kitchen of the recovery house where Keanu had stayed the night on a worn-out chair. Coffee was already made and Keanu was sitting there, barefoot, reading an old book. Ben sat across from him and gently placed the folded letter on the table. It's not much, he said, his voice sounding sleepy and full of feeling. But I needed to say it. Keanu didn't open the letter right away. He just looked at Ben with a proud and calm look, the same way he had stayed quiet through sadness and now through healing. When you're ready, Keanu said. Ben nodded. It's yours when you want it, just like this name. They had breakfast together. It was simple, scrambled eggs, toast, and apples. But for Ben it felt like a fresh start. Later they walked through the city. Not as famous people or strangers who had lost things, but as brothers. Keanu wore a baseball cap low on his head, and for the first time in years Ben didn't wear a mask. They passed a bus stop where a homeless man was drawing in a notebook. Ben slowed down, took a bill from his jacket, and put it in the man's cup. Nice lines, Ben said. Keep drawing. The man looked up, surprised, and then smiled. Keanu had seen this kind of thing before. It was the moment when someone who had only been surviving started to give something to others. That night, when they were back in their quiet space, Ben gave Keanu the second letter. Keanu read it in silence. It said, you didn't just give me a home. You gave me back my name. You gave me something no one ever has before, the chance to rewrite my ending. When Keanu finished reading, he folded the letter and placed it over his heart. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Ben smiled through his tears. You already are a Reeves, Keanu whispered. And I'm proud to call you my brother. The next day, Ben stood at the edge of the treatment center's gravel path, holding the certificate they had given him that morning. A soft breeze carried the smell of eucalyptus and earth. The light from the morning sun made long shadows on the porch. He had seen a lot of exits in his life, group homes, jail, shelters, but this one felt different. It was like stepping out of a room he wasn't sure he would survive. Just outside the parking lot was Keanu, leaning against a simple black car, his sunglasses pushed up into his hair, and his hands in the pockets of his worn jacket. Keanu didn't wave or call out. He just stood there, calm and steady like always. Ben walked slowly toward him, the certificate tucked under his arm like something fragile. They exchanged a small nod. No big celebration. No congratulations. Just understanding. Keanu reached into his coat and pulled out a small, slightly worn key with a leather tag. On the tag, it was written in thick black ink, Malibu. Ben looked at it, confused. What's this for? Keanu gave a half smile. Something I've been holding on to. Let's go. The drive down the coast was long and mostly quiet. They passed rocky cliffs, crashing waves, and tall pine trees. Ben looked out the window at the scenery, trying to memorize it. For once, his mind wasn't racing. He felt calm. They turned onto a narrow, private road lined with old olive trees. At the end of the road was a simple guest house with low stone walls, a wraparound porch, and flowers growing along the windows. Keanu parked. This is it, Keanu said. Ben looked at him. You're renting this? Keanu shook his head. It's yours. Ben just stared at him, not sure he heard right. Wait, what do you mean? You're giving me a house. Keanu said gently, it's not charity. It's family. Ben didn't move. He was afraid the moment would disappear if he reached for it. The front door creaked as they stepped inside. The sunlight came through the curtains. The space was simple. There was a couch, a kitchen with the basics, and a table already set for one. There were a few books on a shelf, some of them well-loved. There was a photo of the ocean and a little cactus on the windowsill. It didn't feel like a favor. It felt like a real home. Ben's eyes caught something on the kitchen counter. An envelope. He picked it up and saw his name written on the front in neat handwriting. He hesitated for a moment before opening it. The letter inside said, Ben, this isn't a handout. This isn't pity. This is a door you already had the key to. You've walked through more pain than most people can imagine, and you're still standing. I meant it when I said this is family. I don't know what the years ahead will bring, but I want you to know you're not alone in them anymore. This place is yours. Make it home. Rest. Dream. Feel. You deserve all of that. We never got to grow up together, but we can grow forward one day at a time. Ben sat down at the small kitchen table with the letter in his hands. He didn't cry right away. He just read the letter again and again. Each time it felt more real. It wasn't just a dream. It was true. That evening, after Keanu quietly left to give him some space, Ben unpacked his few things. A backpack, some shirts, and an old paperback book. He folded each item carefully, putting them in drawers that didn't squeak when they opened. Then something strange stirred in him, a need to write. He hadn't written anything in years, not even a text longer than a sentence. But he found a notepad near the fridge and a pen. And he wrote, not because he had to, but because there were some things his voice couldn't say. Some truths needed to be written down. He wrote slowly, carefully, letting the quiet guide him. The letter said, Keanu, I've been waiting for the rug to get pulled out again, for someone to say, just kidding, or, you didn't really think this was for you, did you? Because that's what life taught me. But then you didn't pull away. You stayed when I ran. You didn't chase me. You waited. And that made me want to come back. You didn't fix me. You didn't try. You just saw me. And I think that's what broke me open. I've never had a house that felt like anything more than walls and windows, but this one, I don't know. Feels like I was meant to find it. And maybe I was meant to find you. I've spent years not knowing where I belonged, but for the first time, I think I've found my place. Not because of a roof or a key, but because someone finally looked at me and said, you're enough. You didn't just give me shelter. You gave me a name back. I won't waste it. Love, Ben. He folded the letter neatly and placed it next to Keanu's on the counter. Then he walked outside, barefoot in the cool evening air. He stood on the porch and looked out at the ocean. The sky was deep blue, and the first stars were beginning to shine. He wrapped his arms around himself, not because he was cold, but because he felt a strange kind of peace. He closed his eyes and listened. There was no shouting, no sirens, no fear. Just wind, waves, and the sound of his own heart, finally calm. Tomorrow would come with whatever it would bring. But tonight he had a roof, a brother, and a page full of truth. For the first time in his life, Ben Reeves felt like he belonged. And that was everything. Keanu found the envelope one evening while he was organizing the bookshelf in the guest house. It was tucked between the pages of an old black journal he had left there for Ben. The envelope's edges were a little worn from being handled. There was no name on the outside, but the handwriting inside was clear. It was Ben's handwriting, slanted and a little rushed, but full of feeling. Keanu sat down on the couch, unfolded the letter, and began to read. Keanu, you probably weren't supposed to find this until later. Maybe I was going to leave it on the counter or mail it to you when I felt braver. But I figured if I didn't write it now, I might never say it at all. First of all, thank you. But that word doesn't feel big enough. There isn't a word for what you did. Not in the dictionary anyway. You didn't just give me a room with clean sheets or a view of the ocean or 3 meals a day. You gave me a reason to believe I could still matter. You made me feel human again. Not a project, not a pity case, just your brother. I still remember that first note you gave me. The one that said, "You matter more than you know." At the time, I crumpled it up. I thought you were just another stranger trying to feel good about helping. But you weren't. You never walked away. You listened before you spoke. You showed up without cameras. You never asked me to be someone I wasn't ready to be. And somehow, in all that silence and patience, you saw me. I spent most of my life thinking I was a mistake God forgot to delete. That's what I wrote in my journal once. You found it, I know you did. And you didn't say anything to embarrass me or make me feel weak. You just looked me in the eye and said, "You were the reason I answered that letter." That moment changed me. Not overnight, but it started something, a crack in the wall I'd built around myself. I always wondered what it would feel like to have a brother. I used to imagine one when I was younger in the system. I made up stories in my head. He was taller than me, smarter. He played guitar sometimes and the piano. He had kind eyes and didn't let the world harden him. Turns out I didn't imagine you. You're real. When you handed me that key to this house, I almost couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to say. I'm not used to receiving things without strings. But you said something I'll never forget. This is not charity. This is family. I didn't grow up with that word meaning anything good. Family to me used to mean yelling, hunger, cold nights, and locked doors. But you redefined it. You made it safe. You didn't just give me a roof, Keanu. You gave me back my name, the part of me I had buried. The part that still wanted to be someone. The part that could still care, still dream, still love. I've been clean now for 97 days. I write it down every morning. I look in the mirror and say it out loud, not to prove anything to the world, just to remind myself that I'm still here, still trying. I know there will be hard days. I don't expect life to suddenly be perfect. But now I know I don't have to face it alone because I have a brother, a real one. And someday I hope I can be that for someone else. Not with money, not with fame, but with presence, with patience, with love that shows up and stays. You're the first man in my life who ever did that. So this letter, it's not goodbye. It's not the end. It's just a thank you folded inside a promise that I will keep going. I'll earn the gift you gave me, not with perfection, but with honesty. And maybe one day when someone asks me how I got here, I'll say this. I met a man who didn't owe me anything, but he gave me everything anyway. Ben Reeves. Keanu set the letter down. The wind blew through the open patio doors, carrying the soft smell of the ocean and citrus. Keanu sat quietly for a long time, letting the words sink in. He thought about all the broken moments in his life, all the people he had lost, and all the times he wasn't sure if hope would come again. And now here was this letter, written by a man the world had forgotten. A man who, despite everything, had chosen to get up and try. Keanu wiped his eyes. He wasn't crying because he was sad. He was crying because something sacred had happened. Love had found its place in a place everyone thought was empty. And in a world filled with noise, two broken brothers had found each other. Not because of blood, but because of grace. Because one man didn't give up on the other. Family isn't just who you're born to. It's who shows up when no one else does. Keanu whispered, I answered a letter but found a brother. And that changed everything. As the sun set over Malibu, Keanu and Ben walked along the quiet beach. There was no music, just the sound of their footsteps in the waves. Two men, once silent, now bound together by choice, by brotherhood. Months had passed since Ben finished his recovery. His transformation wasn't just about what was on the outside. He stood taller now, and his eyes didn't look for an escape. They were focused. He had taken a job helping others who were just starting their recovery. He volunteered at a youth shelter, telling the kids, they listen to me because they know I've walked where they're walking. Keanu didn't say anything. He just smiled. That was enough. In the journal Ben kept at the guest house, page after page told the story of a man rediscovering who he was. Not Keanu's shadow. Not Gerard's mistake. Just Ben Reeves. A man with a name, a path, and a purpose. The world would never be the same. Ben's story quietly made its way out into the world through a foundation update. Keanu didn't say much. Just one paragraph. A brother found in silence, now working to break the cycle for others. That was all it took. People reached out, not to praise Keanu but to share their own stories. A sister who helped her brother out of addiction. A father who reunited with his daughter after 20 years. A woman who took in her niece when no one else would. Each letter reminded everyone that hope spreads quietly like waves. One evening, Keanu sat with Ben watching the sun dip low. Ben held a guitar, strumming gently, not to perform but to soothe. Keanu had always known music was something Ben never fully shared before, not even with the world. But now Ben played for himself just like he was living his life. Simple, steady, and real. And for the first time in his life, Keanu realized something he'd always known but never understood fully. Sometimes the only thing a person really needs to change is someone who believes they can. If you like this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures, mysteries, and unforgettable moments. Your support keeps these stories alive and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video.